So, good morning.
Good morning.
Everything we say in here can be considered words of Torah because we are Jews who are ultimately studying. So let's say the bracha right. They say that Dr. Preston Bradley, you know who Preston Bradley was? Preston Bradley was an icon preacher in Chicago, whose church was First something downtown. Anyway, he was very well known, spoke all around there. All the mayors knew him, and you knew all the mayors. He used to say, we was asked in an interview, said, Dr. Bradley, what do you say when you pray, when you go in to give your sermon? Any prayer you say before you go in to speak? And he says, yes, he says, my prayer is that they have short memories. A cute answer. It's true, but a cute answer. So I have sort of a feeling about doing this because I'm going to be doing something I love to do. And it may be something you've studied with me before. But then again, you change, you grow, you forget, I forget. And we're going to be doing issues that I think are so interesting, and some of which involve our own congregation, that at least our congregation's history, and maybe something that's going on now, we don't know. And that's the area of response. Who was here? I'm sorry I missed him. I must have slept through this. When Rabbi Wachowski was here and spoke on a Sunday morning on responsa. He's the doyen of Reform Response. Isn't that nice? Doyen? Is doyen female? O-D-O-Y-E-N-N-E? Well, then I can say it. Nobody else is going to correct me. He wrote, now is the chairman of the Response Committee, teacher at the rabbinic school, so bright and well-known, great books. Of responsive, because he's the one as the chairman of the committee of the Reform Rabbis who gets all these interesting questions from congregation. Well, shall we celebrate the second day of Yom Tov or not? I mean, is that reform? Is it not reform? Is it too orthodox? And what would the tradition say about it? For example, okay? That's an example of the kind of questions that they got and get these days. The fact that there can be such things as responsa, questions sent in by not only rabbis, but the average Jews and congregations, they may lean a little bit toward answering the rabbi's questions first. There certainly is a little bit of an old boys now becoming old girls network too. But really, the questions can come from congregations or temple boards, and often do. So when you ask yourself, how in the world has Judaism survived with a basic text, Torah, that is so ancient that it's in most ways hard to recognize putting it into a contemporary setting? How has that happened? It's happened by interpretation, but it's happened by asking people who have a scholastic opinion as to the questions. It does say in the Torah, if you have trouble understanding something of Jewish law, what do? Well, that is a result of it. But the Torah says, go to the judge who will be at that time. It's even wider than just the rabbi. Go to the judge who will be in that time. It's susceptible of a lot of different interpretation, right? And however he teaches you, they teach you to the right or the left, that's what you should do. So in other words, there's a, I'm going to say escape clause, but it's not an escape clause. It's a way into change. That's what it is. It's a clear way into change. Now, I'm in the middle of my introduction. Do you get it? We're going to get to the interesting text, but I think this stuff is interesting. except you just have to listen to me. Eric Yaffe, you know who Eric Yaffe is?
Yes.
Eric Yaffe is the former chair, president of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, now also the Union of Reform Judaism. And here's what Yaffe wrote in what I thought was a wonderful short article. He said, the difference between Reform Judaism and traditional Judaism is that Reform Judaism is a partnership between rabbi and congregant. That as much a decisive authority is given to congregations, whereas it's not true in Orthodox Judaism. Orthodox Judaism, you accept it or you don't accept it, but you don't ask the rabbis to be part of their committee in Orthodox Judaism, unless you got a good certificate, ordained in study Talmud. But Reform Judaism, this may be some of our weakness, by the way, it's probably more of our strength, is that congregations really make the choice ultimately. Who's going to decide whether the second day of holidays is now a Reform mitzvah or a thing that Reform congregations do and they're encouraged to do? The rabbis? No. Matter of fact, the rabbis haven't come in much on this. But the answer is congregations are going to decide. And yet we have to wait a few years for them to decide. An example that people don't know, and it sort of goes the opposite way. The rabbis, years back, wanted to get rid of Kol Nidre.
No.
Very great movement against Kol Nidre because they didn't like the ethical feel of it. And they weren't talking about the music. They were talking about, it says, anything I do wrong from this Yom Kippur to next Yom Kippur, may I be forgiven in advance. We interpret it a lot differently, but if we really read the words and look at the history, that's that's its origin. The rabbi said, no, that's not something we Jews want to say. That first book that opens the door to anti-Semites. They have promises ahead of time. They say we'll do the wrong thing, but then we're forgiven. That's what we say about the Catholics, right? In terms of confessions. But the people wouldn't let go of it. And the people wanted the melody and the feel of it. And that it just went with Yom Kippur so much that they said, darn the words. We're going to do it. And they did it. Now there's an issue where the rabbis had a very clear ethical, Jewishly ethical case. The congregation decided. See if I have anything else I wanted to tell you in this introduction. Rabbis teach. Rabbis exhort. Rabbis write documents. Jews make decisions. Looking back over, people say, well, let's wait a while. The people will decide. One more that I forgot to write down, but I think is so interesting. You know the story of the knife being brought into the sanctuary? Okay. They had a problem in temple days. This is Hillel, Shammai, and the problem was you're not allowed to carry a knife or many other things on the Sabbath. But this is Pesach. But on Pesach, you therefore, because you're going to need that knife. It sounds very strange. You're going to need that knife in the sanctuary to kill the sheep or the goat. It's one of the sheep. I think it's the sheep. Therefore, you've got to put the knife in the sanctuary before the first day of Pesach. Otherwise, you'll be carrying it in. I may have lost a detail or two, but that's basically the problem. Okay? How are they going to solve that? And Hillel said, if the Jews are not prophets, then they are the children of the prophets. Meaning, they'll figure it out. And Hillel then said, and they did figure it out, because one of the people going in, who's not allowed to carry the knife in, along with the ram, takes the knife, puts it in the fleece, in the wool of the ram, gets it in there so that it won't fall out, and goes in with the ram. The ram you could write a short story about this. The ram carrying the instrument of destruction into the temple. I mean, the visual is strange. But, and Hillel said, and that's the way the people figured it out. If they're not prophets, they're the sons of prophets. They'll figure out a way to make this law somehow work. And they won't have to ask the rabbis. Very interesting. The knife in the temple on basic. Yeah. Yeah. It is, but then again, I think it's bizarre because it's based on the whole sacrificial system, which in its own way. How in the world did we get from that to this? Isn't it a wonder? Isn't it a philosophy that says the Torah is alive? And stop me before I do this more. But they say, now of course I lost it. Okay, that's probably good. It'll come back. All right. Our congregation has sent in responsa to the responsa committee to get an answer. That's one of the things Rabbi Wachowski talked about when he was here. The fact that we have a Torah from the Holocaust, and for a while we were reading from it, even though it's not a perfect Torah, it's got some errors, not errors, but it's got some defects in it where ink has been flaked away and cannot be repaired, said one scribe anyway. And can we read from it anyway? Because the Jewish law is you don't read from a Torah that's not perfect. But this was a Holocaust Torah, so that was an issue. And I was on the side of those who said we should read from it. And I had our bar mitzvah kids often read from it. But the question was raised, is that right? You know, it's really not perfect. So I did the best thing, sent in the response, sent in the question to Rabbi Wachowski, and now I'm happy to say, one of the often quoted responses that came from this congregation. So anyway, their committee said, you shouldn't. And gave a lot of good reasons for it. But we're not studying that. We're studying these issues over here. And so, I'm going to let you not hear my voice for maybe a minute and a half. Harold Ramis died. And anybody have a relationship with him? One person here has sort of a relationship, and that's Phyllis, is his teacher. So I'd love her to give you just a moment.
A number of years ago, I was a teacher at a place called Eight Skying in Highland Park. And Harold and his family were members. And I was hired to do family education for what they call pods, family pods. And groups of families would get together and meet, and a teacher would come in weekly, bi-weekly, and teach the family. And his family was part of that pod. And I got to know him and his wife and the children that were still, he had a child from a former marriage. And he was very, very bright, very knowledgeable Jewishly, and a real mensch. Because if I was teaching something at a kid's level, you know, you're teaching a family, he wouldn't jump in and he let me do my thing. And that's all I could say is he was smart, he was a nice Jew, and he was a mensch.
That business about not jumping in and letting you do your thing.
You know, if you know something and somebody is teaching and you want to add to it, it's very hard to hold back. I know.
You do? Okay. All right, so here are the things we're going to talk about today. Responsive on, membership cap, which very much has involved this congregation. If you're sort of the newcomer, you may not know that, but well, so I'm very glad that you're here to talk about it. Can a rabbi be married to a non-Jew? Or can a person who is not, wants to be a rabbi, but is already married to a non-Jew, can they be accepted into rabbinic school? That's a hot issue right now. And the ever-present hot issue of tattoos. Are they increasing?
Yeah.
If you go to a health club where they're younger people, you know they're increasing. If you have grandchildren who have a little other places. So those are the three issues. Okay? Anybody, anything to say or ask before we get into text?
Do you need this?
Do I need that? Thank you. If I run out of this, you're.
Oh.
Get your backup. Put the same color.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
you know, I
Buy it at dollar store?
got Kleenex. What do you got? What's your brand?
Kleenex.
You can come to me too.
Such traditionalists.
Okay. Now. We lost a page someplace, so I have been running this morning with great help from my wife and Orly in the office, who's so nice, to, over the telephone, transcribe a missing page. And then she did it, so we're all okay. But, don't go away. I'm going to read you the question. The question is she'ela. The answer is tshuva. And here the congregation, here is the description of what the congregation has written in. Can you hear me? Should I stand?
Can't hear people a lot, so microphone would be helpful.
Yeah.
You started?
My cousin.
And you can't die with family.
Yes, you can. A congregation located in the suburb of a metropolitan area in the American Midwest, happens to be a suburb of Minneapolis, is inquiring whether its membership and choosing to remain small would find support in Jewish tradition. It's important to know, writes the rabbi, that most of our families are young and do not have enough financial resources to finance the building of a new structure. We could perhaps build an addition for religious school classrooms, but that still doesn't answer our major objective, to create a family of friends. The rabbi adds a document which sets forth how such a close-knit community is envisaged. The congregation is about 10 years old and grew from small beginnings into its present size of more than 350 members, 320 children in the religious school. The present building is not large enough to hold all classes at once, and different sessions have been introduced. I guess that means on different days. There are other Reform congregations in the general metropolitan area, each with more than 1,000 members. The rabbi of the inquiring congregation writes, while we are not anxious to put a cap on our membership, we are concerned that if we do not, we will turn into a congregation too large to continue to promote the ideals and values for which we were founded. Well, if you're the responsive committee, here's the question. We'll read the actual answer, but any reactions? Yeah.
It reminds me of people who say they don't want to go to a large university because they'll get lost in it. And my response to that is, you will find your own circle within the larger institution, which, because it is a larger institution, has more to offer you as a person and as a student. And the same here. It's almost, in the way it's stated here, it's almost discriminatory. It's almost saying, we are the elite. We are a group, and we just want to stay the group that we are.
Makes sense.
There is a response to being a big congregation. We have chavurot here, which, when I used to come here at temple at the beginning, I saw so many people I didn't know, and I felt so lonely, And now I belong to a chavura, and we became like a family. Everybody cares about each other. So there is a way to solve a big congregation into a small, chavurot.
I still have to think there's a right of a congregation to remain small and have a lot of different choices out there. I mean, it should not turn into something we don't want to.
I also think that keeping it self-contained and small, you don't grow, you can ultimately die because your congregants will get older and you don't have young people to spur in new ideas and life.
Okay, one more. Oh, two. One, two.
I would think you could make the issue by saying, temporarily we want to remain small, but as our circumstances change, we're planning to grow. And this way you could have the best of both worlds.
Although the people who are on the waiting list don't have the best of both worlds.
That's why that was just going to be my point, is that being on the other end of that, for us, we really wanted to join when we were at 901, and we were told, sorry. Basically, they said, there's no room for you. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, this is a Jewish institution. We are looking to become part of this institution, and they told us we don't have room for you. It's hard, it's very hard to accept that.
Irene, yes,
Something that, it
then
sometimes,
we're going to this.
just really fast about the ages of the people and not talking about like, will the younger people bring up, replenish the money pool and the population pool. But a real family has all ages. And so, yes, you want to be like in a chavurah, most of the people tend to be around the same age. So you make a little family, but then you also have a bigger family. And also, as you get older, sometimes you want your children to join your temple, and then they can't because you put a cap on it.
You could have written even a better response sometime. You've raised so many issues, so many wonderful thoughts about values. Okay, so let's see. Oh, you don't have this yet.
Now, here's the one that's needs a little redact.
Let me tell you what you're getting. You're getting the response, the answer, but you're getting another page, which should be the third page. So you do have to insert it into your document. Who's going to help with this? You got it. Fellas, do so. And the second page is in my hand. But, no, don't need. I don't know any of
Did you get enough?
And the single shirt sheet with the different type.
Okay, well, I got it.
This is the motive.
Then you need a single page.
We're going to read it out loud, so don't.
Does everybody have one?
Second sheet. Second sheet. Okay, first sheet. Basically, what you've got is two stapled and one single. And the single goes into, and you'll see where it goes.
Anybody doesn't have the first
I
reading?
have to see.
You
The
don't have
second
to-
one is slowly, I don't have any more of the second one.
Yeah.
Do you have a second?
Do you have a second? Have a second?
There's,
I'm gonna give it back.
I need to see.
The second, here, I have seconds, here.
Okay.
Second.
Yes. Ish.
Thank you, תודה רבה.
Errors like these of putting in give me more anxiety than anything else. I'm glad that the secretary was on the phone with Hannah this morning. I told you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so here is their answer. I think we can start, let me start at the bottom of page 3. Okay, somebody will read a little bit, please?
The responsive committee of the CCAR has previously dealt with membership limitation, but it addressed only matters of geographical and demographic import. The issue before us is different, and in fact, we have not found any material which speaks directly to it.
It's interesting, right? This whole issue, and I will tell you why we've never dealt with it. Keep going.
At best, there are general analogies. They show that communities welcomed large numbers of worshipers, a prime example being the synagogue of ancient Alexandria. The centrality of the crowded temple synagogue remained a major feature of Judaism, and this sentiment raised public worship to a higher level than private prayer.
Bigger place.
The large community was considered the ambience in which God was best approached. One traditional source emphasizes, and this speaks to the question before us, that even if one can pray with the minyan at home, it is preferable to go to the synagogue, because the glory of the King, God, is found in the multitude of people. Another author concludes that in a choice between a large and a small synagogue, one should consider the former, unless its noise and confusion make such a choice undesirable.
Well, one has been in a traditional show. So, hopefully God is worshipped among great uproar. It seems to be. Okay, but the point, I guess, is you gotta look very far to find anything in tradition that even hints at an answer to this, other than that big can be nice. Okay, now contemporary perspectives. That's what we're looking for. Another out loud reader? Okay, Lynn.
It may be argued that the traditional preference for worshiping in community, and if possible in a large community, was based on the need for security in numbers in an unfriendly, non-Jewish environment. A consideration, fortunately, not applicable to a North American congregation. Nowadays, it may be said, the pressure of society, with its depersonalizing impact, engenders in us a need to be recognized as individuals and to make interpersonal connections, an objective easier to realize in a small group than in a large congregation, which is often considered cold. These are worthy objectives, and the committee is sympathetic to them. Still, there are other and, in our opinion, weightier considerations that we would bring to the attention of the rabbi and his congregation.
But how often have you heard people talk about, I like it, it's warm. I don't like it, it's cold. Is that a matter of size?
No.
You can't smoke. It's harder, except to, who said this before, Sandy, that, if you're not terribly shy, you have more opportunity to reach out to more people. Okay, what are the weightier considerations which might work against a cap? And here we go, another reader, please. Arthur.
there is, first of all, the principle of the avoidance of giving false impression. A congregation with a cap on its membership will be considered by others as elitist, or organizations that aver to strive for intimacy all too frequently use this claim as a cover word for exclusivity. The very idea of numerous clauses is odious to Jews. While our committee does not in any way assign unworthy motives to the congregation, we would have its members realize what the public impact of membership limitation might be.
Don't turn the page so fast, okay? Can we talk about that for a moment? Giving an impression that you're doing something that you really are not good at, but it looks awful.
You know,
Kosher bacon. Not, it can't be kosher, right? You're just using the words that way. That certainly would be marit ayin. Marit ayin, the look of the eye. In other words, what the eye sees can be just as significant and evaluated as the reality, the objective reality. Fake cheese on the cheese. But here now, that's often the first example we think of, the food. But here the example is, where do you have that? We only are taking so many. I don't know, what in the world does he mean here? The very idea of a numerous clausus is odious to Jews. Does he mean that Gentile country clubs? I'm not sure how they use it. Anybody? The idea of a numerous clausus, meaning a certain number and that's it.
Quota? Does that mean like quota? A quota?
Quota?
Yeah.
Oh, a lot like in a college.
Yes.
yeah.
Ah, thank you, of course. Yeah, we used to, that we don't think is allowed anymore. Right? Okay. So, okay, they don't like it because it looks bad. And you know what? That's what Lynn just said. It looked, I mean, other than the personal impact, okay? And then maybe that's more important, personal impact. But it looks, you know, when it comes down to saying to people, you know, we don't have, it's not where you haven't got room for it. We have a waiting list.
Yeah.
Is that any less? No. Not because of the personal impact. Okay. Now you come with your individual page, okay? I'll go for a while. A congregation should not be considered like a country club which has considerable social prestige, is admittedly elitist, has a waiting list, and selects its members. A congregation should be open to all Jews who wish to worship and educate their children. Also, waiting lists in congregations have, in our experience, led to notable inequities. Well-to-do applicants waiting in line are likely to be advanced over others, for they can better help to alleviate a congregation's financial problem. Whoa, did that ever happen? I'm sure it never happened here.
It didn't. I lived with the membership chair. It didn't happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But, you know, if you, yes, there's a perception. Well, and they got it, how did they move up on the list? Well, some, okay, I'm going to go further. A family who was moved into the neighborhood would wish to have its children associated in religious school with the same friends they have come to know in public school. Sending such children to another part of the city would make their attendance at religious school a less than pleasant and possibly counterproductive experience. Correct? Yeah.
In the same community, there, at least I'm thinking of our community at the time, there were children who were members of more than just one congregation, and yet they went to school together and were friends together. So I think that's kind of a specious argument. I'm if you're in Urbana or someplace really small. Because my kids went to school with kids who went to Northwest Suburban, who went to Maine Township, somebody went to an Orthodox place. And yet they were friends. As a matter of fact, most of them belonged to Maine Township where I lived.
And yet the possibility of feeling out of it is certainly greater if you have to go far away from the synagogue. Anyway, the committee is not unmindful of the congregation's financial strictures, you bet. There are limits to building new accommodations for sanctuary and school, but every effort should be made to find acceptable alternatives. Double worship sessions on holidays. Would we ever do that? School sessions on Shabbat and Sunday. Use of portables. And if needed, an external facility. All these have at one time or another served other congregations to good advantage. Somebody else take over?
At the same time, the congregation's desire for an environment that creates closer interpersonal relationships can be satisfied by the expansion of Chaburot in its own midst. If nonetheless circumstances require it, let the congregation help to establish another congregation in the area, either satellite or a sister congregation, one that will serve the Reformed Jewish community to best advantage.
Do conclusion, too. Please.
The congregation's identity is well known to some of the committee members. They are impressed with the religious spirit that prevails in its midst and with the rabbis and members' earnest desire to advance not only congregational goals, but the welfare of the Jewish people. So we therefore conclude that our tradition clearly favors the openness of the congregation to all Jews, and that openness should be maintained. Neither in personal nor organizational life can we all have our desires fulfilled. And in whatever.
In our view. Right here, the last page of the text.
And in our view, this is what is such conundrum, that there not be in your community a tension between those who already belong and those who wish to join but cannot and have no good alternative. One member of the committee who dissents from the majority and would allow limitation of membership insists, however, that indigent applicants or others with special needs must not be refused.
It's a little strange.
Yeah.
Yes.
This sounds terrible. I don't want to say it in a bad way, but I have a friend. No, I have a friend who belongs to a temple that's aging, and a lot of the people are getting older, and their financial, situation is changing, and there's so many people that can't pay the dues that they're in financial problems, and there's nobody new coming up, So, to what if 2,000 or 1,000 indigent people come in and and we want to welcome them, but then we don't have any room for anybody else and it's a financial strain. So it's a balance between that, and that sounds terrible. I know that sounds terrible coming.
Sounds like Congress.
No, synagogues have to live. People
Yeah.
people have to
I
live.
think that's what I was speaking to when I said, the right to limit. I'm thinking too, in a community like this where there are a lot of options, where new congregations do sprout up and where there are a lot of congregations, and it seems like there's enough existing to absorb people. But in the practical, I didn't realize we're talking just about the idea of openness. Of course, I think, everybody should have a place to join. But there are all those practical considerations that,
But the ones with the special needs, it should be definitely open.
Yeah.
Will cause a lot of discussion about individual cases. However, now let me say just a word about what happened here years and years ago. I don't remember how many years ago it was. The building was not big, the school was gigantic, and what are we gonna do? We can't build a new building. And I don't remember whether it was my suggestion or not, but I was very much in favor of it, was putting a cap on, a membership cap, that I thought would, some of the reasons the rabbi gives there, the congregation will just be overflowing and it won't be the kind of an intimate place we want it to be. And so we had the waiting list. And in retrospect, not a good idea. If I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't. I mean, the congregation had to approve it. You know, if the congregation had said we don't want it, we wouldn't have had it. And why we lost a lot of wonderful people who would have helped in leadership, in Torah, all kinds of things. And you know, we would have worked it out. We would have worked it out with hardly any facilities. I think we had the number was 550. 515.
550.
550.
And there was another issue there, and that was the fact that you were the only rabbi and we had no invested cantor, so that all those responsibilities were yours. And were we to expand to a congregation of 800 or 700 people, it would be a terrible burden on our rabbi. That was one of the board's considerations.
I thank them and I don't remember that very well, but maybe there's a good reason for my not remembering it.
Today is today. I don't know when this was all written. I don't know how many years ago. However, we read all the time about how the membership percentage of Jews who belong to synagogues is getting lower and lower and lower. So to put a cap on the membership, it seems to me, would be shooting yourself in your foot.
No, there were 3 congregations in Chicagoland, and I really want to get on to the next 2. But there are 3 congregations in Chicagoland that had caps. The first one, and I guess this is why a teacher, and started an icon of mine, Arnold Jacob Wolf's congregation, Solel, was the first one to have a cap on the congregation. But and what he thought, and I like this idea too, though that I realized it's never going to happen, is that a congregation should help another congregation get started in its area so they can take. And in retrospect, that was so idealistic. It didn't happen, would never happen. Satellite congregation, KAMs had a satellite congregation. KAM in the early days, when a lot of their members, KAM on the south side, and had a lot of its members moved to the northern suburbs and really wanted to stay with Rabbi Jacob Weinstein, who was such a great man, and who was he was their rabbi, but it was just too much to come back to Hyde Park regularly. So Weinstein said, well, we'll have a satellite in Highland Park, and he asked Arnold Wolf to be the rabbi. But very quickly, as I recall, it became its own place, which is well, that was good. Not exactly what Kay wanted to go there and here, but that was too idealistic. Okay, I have 2 more people, and then we're going to go on to the rabbi who ain't got a Jewish wife.
Okay, so I was.
Or husband, pardon.
I'm a product of the waiting list. I schlepped my son to a independent Hebrew school for a year because I couldn't get in. But I looked at it, and I did Temple Chef. And I think you remember that I came from conservative, traditional, and to pick reform was like revolutionary in my family, but it felt so comfortable for me. And I attended services, I attended adult education, and I waited because I felt, God, everybody wants this, I want it too, I don't want to miss out.
Oh, that's an
Yeah, that's
effect.
another thing, yeah.
That's an effect.
I don't think it would work today, but it felt so like God, and I knew they'd tell me when my name would come up. So this wasn't like ad infinitum. So I'll be inconvenienced for a year and then I'll get it.
Thank you. One more person.
I-
Yeah.
I wanted to say that it happened in my family when Susan and Lauren were bat mitzvah here, and when it was Jason's turn to go into Hebrew school, Robin decided he should be with his friends, and they lived in Northbrook, so they left BJBE, and they went to Beth Shalom. So, you know, I had the same thing happen, because they wanted to be in closer to,
Yeah, that's hard for parents.
yeah.
Okay, and now, a present issue. I will, before I give you the sheets. I try to be organized. Yeah. A little anxiety.
You just did that.
Oh, well, okay, but I'm not gonna hand, stay right here. Yeah. This is a letter that came from Rabbi Jamie Gibson, wonderful. He used to be a young man, when I met him first at campus, a young rabbi, and I was a middle-aged rabbi. A resident of my community, a Jew married to a non-Jew who does not practice any other religion, that is, the non-Jew does not practice it. This Jew, in his community, wishes to become a rabbi. She has been told that because of her marriage, she will not be admitted into the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. She wishes to know why, as a believing Jew who is committed to Jewish life, she cannot be accepted into our seminary as a candidate for the Reform rabbi. I'm just going to ask you this before we get into it. If you were on a committee of the seminary, how you got there so quick, would you say yes? Would you say marriage to a non-Jew does not eliminate one from being rabbi? Oh, but clearly, okay, that's going to be in there, right? But the issue is, they're not trying to judge the goodness of the Jewishness.
Is she
Oh, and what's going to ask you, here are the question. How many people would say the standard is right? She should not be allowed to be a rabbi or enter school.
I'm abstaining.
The rest of you will feel opposite? Would you raise
Is
your
she
hand?
going to raise her children Jewish?
Well,
If she has children?
I was
She's
ready.
Jewish, so the kids are Jewish.
Okay,
But is she
we
going to
don't
raise?
know a lot about this lady, but.
The woman wants to be Jewish, the woman wants to be.
The rabbi.
No,
Wants-
the rabbi is the
wants to
woman.
enter the seminary
The
is,
woman
of
is
course,
the rabbi.
Jewish. Her husband is not Jewish.
I was just
Her
going
husband.
to say, if it's reversed, if it was a male applicant whose wife is not Jewish, there's a difference because she was raising the children, the natural lineal descent. The children are Jewish.
No,
Reform, that's not the case anymore.
Well, Reform Judaism, that's obvious, that's not the truth.
Well,
And you're saying,
Appearances.
you're saying appearances. They don't go into that, but that, they don't go into
This is a different
Okay, any other thoughts on that? Okay, well, let's read what they have to say. By the way, there was and I'll give you a little bit of that also. Try to summarize. You know Shema magazine?
It's online.
Huh?
It's online.
There are pieces of it on.
In the Shema magazine, there was an exchange between two rabbinic students, seemingly good friends, One who thinks that the college has made a mistake in not accepting people who may have non-Jewish spouses, and the other who thinks the college is right. So they give a few of their arguments too. Okay, you ready to do this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Now,
We're sweating here.
Now.
Now.
We have a good time in there, right?
Yeah, we do.
Enlist volunteers.
we know for sure. Shorter and shorter. I got it. I'll come up with that.
Do you have them in the back here?
Extras?
Yeah, we all can.
Extras?
Here's extras.
Everybody got?
There's some extras.
Nice.
I think we have too many, okay.
We got it.
All right, just beginning here. Married to a convert, if a rabbi being married to a convert, never is an issue, is not an issue. A convert is a Jew. So just to make sure that everybody understands. Yeah. What's interesting about this is that the Reform movement has this presently as a standard, that such a person cannot be entered into the seminary either at the beginning or transfer in from someplace if they subsequently marry while they're in school, a non-Jew, they cannot be ordained. So that standard is being challenged by within the movement, by rabbis who say this is not a good idea. There are some good reasons why we should not do this. So that's the challenge. And now here the responsive committee is trying to meet the challenge. Okay, let's go. Anybody else going to read a little bit? Susie, please. Most reform rabbis.
A restaurant. Guess where mine is. President of
No, you
my
want to go to
Shuva.
Shuva.
Okay. Most Reform rabbis in North America, members of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, CCAR, have attended and received their ordination from Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, HUC-JIR. It is the policy of HUC-JIR that a student who is married, engaged, or partnered to a non-Jew will not be ordained as a rabbi or invested as a cantor. Moreover, an individual in such a relationship will not be accepted as a student in the rabbinical or cantorial program at the college institute. HUC-JIR is an independent institution that sets its own rules and standards for admission. It need not consult with the CCAR or with this committee before adopting them. Still, we have been asked for our opinion as to this particular rule, and in our opinion, the rule is a good one. We give it our full and unqualified support.
Now they're going to tell why. By the way, partner to a non-Jew?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Partner is changeable.
Yeah.
Is not a
Like a committed relationship.
yeah, who decides.
Right.
I mean, it seems to me that isn't it strange though to say
Strange.
if you happen to be in a you haven't maybe the reason you haven't made it legal is because it's an
That's a very subjective word.
Or it could be a gay, it could be homosexual. It could be homosexual.
Or two people have been engaged for many years. My ex-husband, his fiance. You know, I'm visiting from out of town.
That's why you can speak personally.
That's right. You got me.
Wonderful. What else can you tell us from out
Hi, I'm from Akron, Ohio, from a small congregation. I've come here for the last 4 or 5 Yom Kippurs. I'm thinking of relocating here after living in Akron for 36 years. My kids are all in the area, and I love this congregation. I love Yom Kippur services. I sometimes cry after the sermons. I'm not too thrilled with our new rabbi back home.
Don't tell me who it
I won't, because he was in this area. And he's very, very nice, don't get me, he means very well, he's very nice, but they've changed the order of the service.
is. Okay, we have to get back to this.
Go on.
Yeah.
Okay?
You don't want, if I.
Thanks for speaking from Akron.
But the this congregation is very, very warm. I'm back to a point we were speaking of before, the people here are very nice.
Tell me your name.
Rhea Bateman. Rhea.
Rita.
But we have a waiting list for Ohio.
I was gonna say, if I came here and wanted to join, I'm afraid I couldn't get in.
You came at the right era. Now we take anybody. You need everybody. Okay, now come on, this is not so all right, I'll read a while to let you gain your strength. There was a time not so long ago when the She'ilah question such as this was surely not in the grave. That Jewish law prohibits mixed marriage, that is, a marriage between a Jew and a non-Jew, in which the non-Jewish spouse does not convert to Judaism. The halacha goes so far as to declare that such unions are not recognized as marriages at all. Until very recent times, this prohibition was strongly felt and observed by the preponderant majority of the American Jewish community, which is probably the families in which we grew up, or at least of our grandparents. The situation has changed, however. That's where this question, of course, comes from, because there's a new openness about intermarriage, and boundaries are being pushed a little bit. Yeah, this, and maybe this too. The first of these is the rise in the incidence of mixed marriage among American Jews, and the acceptance of this fact within the community. Certainly true. Indeed, surveys indicate that many Jews today would regard mixed marriage as a normal aspect of Jewish communal life. Maybe they came to do that because a child of theirs or a relative of theirs was involved in a mixed marriage, and they wanted to make their peace with it, and I'll make my peace with it, and maybe for other reasons. If the Jewish community once turned its back upon those who married out, today's emphasis upon Jewish survival and continuity leads many of our congregation to open their doors to the mixed married in an effort to keep them within the fold. Does that describe this congregation? Mm-hmm. The Reform movement in particular has instituted an energetic program of outreach designed to help mixed married couples and families feel welcome within our congregations and to explore and study Judaism. These two factors seem to have created the impression that marriage to a non-Jew is no longer an impediment to full participation in Reformed Jewish life. Do you think that's the case? In general, I would say yes. If that is the case, it is perhaps not so difficult to understand why a Jew might sincerely believe that her marriage to a non-Jew ought not to stand in the way of her becoming a Reformed rabbi. Dilution of strictures makes bordering strictures softer. No? Okay. Well, we're going to keep going. I need another reader from that belief, however.
That belief, however, rests upon.
Sandy,
Oh,
Louder.
louder?
Louder.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
then Sandy better do it.
Okay. Sandy, you've been elected.
I've been elected. If elected, I sure must have been. That belief, however, rests on an incomplete and therefore incorrect perception of our attitude towards marriage between Jews and non-Jews. Although we do not use terms such as prohibition and sin to describe mixed marriage, and although we welcome mixed married households into our community, we do not condone mixed marriage itself. As our conference has written, quote, "It is a mitzvah for a Jew to marry a Jew, so that the sacred heritage of Judaism may be transmitted most effectively from generation to generation."
Let's stop here for just a second. Although we welcome mixed marriage households into our community, we do not condone mixed marriage itself. That is a cropper. It seems to me, out of a lot of years of experience talking about this and dealing with my own position, those two things don't fit. To say, fine, come on in, we'll be glad to have you, marriage, And part of it is, of course, a personal rejection. It's not a philosophical thing. It's not a rational thing. You just feel rejected and you feel terrible. Especially if it's your rabbi, meaning sort of your temple, meaning sort of Judaism. All these things. So I think that one of the reasons more change is going on, change in this congregation in terms of officiating in mixed marriages, is that just doesn't make sense. And I think that's the reason. And doesn't fulfill its purpose.
I still think that it's proper for us to teach our children that we expect them to marry Jews, to live in a place where our children will know other Jewish people, to make sure when they go away to school that they go where there are, to try to keep that as a mitzvah. Once they marry, then welcome them. But I think until that time, I don't think it's wrong to tell our children we expect them to raise Jewish families.
So what are you telling the children of those marriages in the congregation about? We're accepted in the congregation, the children are in the religious school.
I'll tell you what I tell my students, because I teach sixth graders. I tell them, you're Jews, your parents are sending you here. They expect you to become Jews. They expect you to do the mitzvot. You are Jewish, and that's what I tell them. And whenever your parents are paying the bucks and taking you here, they've made that decision for you.
But you know what? You have a lot of mixed families,
Yes,
mixed marriages, families.
However,
Okay,
if they're
stop.
sending their children
You have to
here.
listen. Stop.
Okay.
I'll be willing to go on with this and not
Okay.
We have to
do
have time
more.
for tattoos.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I mean, things that we don't get to today, you know, we have one, not two more, but one more session next week. We can do it. I just, it was my fault to interpolate that business there, that it doesn't work. But having taken the fault on myself, let's go on. Okay. All right, disbelief. I don't even know where I. Okay, Judaism, that is to say, resists mixed marriage because it weakens the fabric of family relationships and the survival potential of the Jewish community, and because it makes it more difficult to establish the mikdash ma'at, which means the small sanctuary, which should be the goal of every Jewish marriage. That should carry a special weight for us as rabbis. I'm going to skip over the first half here because I think it's repetitious. First half of that paragraph. Yet those rabbis who officiated mixed marriages do so out of the hope that officiation will encourage the non-Jewish spouse to help build a Jewish home, to help raise Jewish children, and to one day make the choice, one day make the choice to become a Jew. To put it differently, we Reform Jews are not indifferent to the marriage choices of our people. On the contrary, we want them to make the choice for Jewish marriage, which by definition is a marriage between Jews. This is rather repetitious. We do not in the least regard our welcoming attitude toward the married and our efforts at reaching outreach to them. But we should never ever forget that the ideal toward which we must strive, teach, and lead is that Jews should marry Jews. Since one of the ways in which we convey our teaching is through personal example, there's one that's powerful. A rabbi's life and home should embody this ideal. Because if the rabbi is married to a non-Jew, how can the rabbi very well teach in confirmation class be in a school where the teachers say, we want you to marry Jews. It's the right thing to do. What about the rabbi? That's powerful. Sure.
Well, I know of rabbis who, once they became rabbis, married non-Jews and still officiate. But some congregations are higher than that. Well, and our cantor was partnered with a non-Jew, correct, Corey?
Friends.
Yes. Yeah.
We're married, but we're certainly
They were partners, they're good, married. Married now. Good. Yeah.
married now. Though he still is not Jewish.
That's right.
You're right, you're right.
If the wrong man still.
Not all so clear.
I believe that, and it happened in my family, married a non-Jew, and you agreed to raise your children Jewish. I think there's no question about it. Children are raised Jewish, and it doesn't matter if one of the parents is non-Jew.
May I say something? I think that it's one thing when you have members of the congregation who are married to non-Jews. That's one thing. But the rabbi is not a member of the congregation. He is the leader of the congregation. And for example, when a spouse comes home from a day of work or whatever, if that spouse is a doctor or a teacher or whatever, the other spouse can say, how was your day, or this or that. When a rabbi and his or her spouse are speaking about something or conversing about something, that other spouse should have a feeling of what has gone on, or should have some kind of, something that they know about the Jewish religion, more than maybe lessons or whatever. They should have a feeling, and a feeling that the congregation should know that, yes, the rabbi's spouse knows where we are coming from.
Yeah, but that's a personal value decision,
Yeah,
evaluation,
but-
in which a number of rabbi spouses would fall, would be lacking.
Right, but even if it's,
Even if they're both Jews.
even if it's a convert who comes to the temple, at least you feel this is a person who loves the rabbi and converted and is coming here and making an effort and, wants to be one of us.
It's hard because in not so recent years, thank you. I get Kleenex, I get.
A little mask, a little mask, and a little care mask.
The new rabbi spouses, this is prior to women as rabbis, prior to women as rabbis. The newer, the last 20, 25 years, are generally women who have careers of their own and see themselves not as
Rebbitzin, I understand that.
and therefore, it's hard, you cut a lot of them out of the picture.
Right.
If you have those expectations. You should have a panel of Rebbitzins about that. Don't ask him.
Bert and I got married. I wasn't Jewish. we decided to raise Joe in the Jewish community. And I couldn't not be where he was. So I came here to all the classes, I did all the kinds of things. And when I converted, so many people were surprised that I wasn't already Jewish because I was so involved.
There are many people like you who.
Well, you've had a very full journey.
Yes,
And you got a good kid.
yes, thank you.
My sister and brother-in-law, who, as you know, are and were on faculty at the University of Illinois, have a very good friend, the Carlsons, and the Carlsons, along with Sinai Temple, were very active in Zionist situations, and they were very close friends until he got appointed to the chairmanship of the Department of Princeton, so moved to Princeton. So they're contemporaries of my brother-in-law. So Richard is almost 80, and 6 months ago, they got an invitation to attend a party in honor of Richard's conversion. They had no idea that he was not Jewish. He always felt he was Jewish. They sent their children to religious school, and he felt that he was a part of that community, but he decided that since he's lived like a Jew, he wanted to die like a Jew, so he converted to Judaism at that age. But always felt committed. I mean, he acted committed. It wasn't only he felt it. Acted committed to the Jewish community. So it is, in my opinion, with a rabbinic spouse who, even if it weren't a rabbinic spouse, in this day and age, we have to support each other in our chosen professions. And if I thought, for example, that the law was full of it, how could I live with my husband who's an attorney? Or if he looked down upon teachers as being really not relevant to society, how could I live with that? Yet we respect each other, and I think the same would be true in a relationship between rabbinic spouses where one partner is not Jewish. I really, really believe that, because they must have been supporting each other all this time.
So, anybody change their mind about those who think that this should be changed, that there should be a possibility for people who marry non-Jews to be rabbis? Okay. Now, okay, and I'll add one thing for you. Pardon me. The exchange between two rabbinic students on this issue is much too long to read, but I will give you a few of these salient points that they raise. to see if they make sense to you. Here's some of them. So, the student who said, yes, it is okay. See what you It is okay to ordain as rabbis and cantors those who are married to non-Jews. We should do so, this student says, because in doing so, in not allowing, we exclude potential fine leaders who may have come late to their interest in Judaism and who are already married. Someone non-Jewish. There's some strength in that, right? And that's not so unusual. But for a late life or a second career, a lot who's in that situation.
John Linder, it was much
Only in terms of
no, they were a late decision.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I mean. And what a loss that would have been had his wife not been Jewish and he would have been ordained. You know, that's the issue of Brian.
too many ifs. Too many ifs to know in there.
Yeah.
You need somebody who's like John and his wife is Jewish.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what part of what makes John such a good thing, that he has a supportive Jewish wife.
Yeah.
that's the first thing. Second thing is, other professional organizations in the Jewish community don't have this requirement for membership. If you apply for membership in the Central Conference of American Rabbis and you are ordained a rabbi, have been ordained a rabbi by maybe the Reconstructionist movement or another movement, and you are technically thereby a rabbi, the Central Conference of American Rabbis will accept you as a member, because they don't have that kind of a, and therefore the school should be in congruence with that. And finally, one said, would you oppose ordaining a man or woman who is married to a self-proclaimed secular Jew?
Or a humanistic Jew.
Yeah, well, yeah. Answer, why not? Of course, that's a Jewish person. So let's not get the inner squabbles about who we agree with, what our philosophy is. If you're a Jew, and even if you're a Jew who never does anything, but technically you're a Jew, you're a Jew.
Mr. Golden Mayer said, anyone who calls himself a Jew is a Jew.
And the other side, the rabbi says the prohibition should be in effect. Says the student, it would be a great official endorsement of intermarriage if there were rabbis going out who were intermarried. And he said also, it's giving up the particular Jewish rules in favor of the universal rules. Trying to be universalist is overwhelmed at this point your particular Jewish concerns. That's beyond. So I guess what they're saying, we know where the push is. Intermarriage has caused an awful lot of reevaluation in the Jewish community over years now. Talks, and anguish, outreach, and all these things. You know, this conversation could be replicated in a lot of different ways. And that has had an effect on our feeling about intermarriage. And that is, have people wanting, everybody, always people want to open new doors. Right? New doors. And some of them should be open. Most people, I have a sense, agree that this is not what it should be. All right, we're going to stop here and let people have the last comment. And next week we'll work on tattoos. So
I won't be here.
Well, then maybe they
Come back.
You can see it
I
online.
can't come back.
It'll be
See it
online. It'll be online.
It'll be online.
Being filmed,
Give me
yeah.
the-
Yeah. Go to the Temple website.
Okay, Arthur.
Is it still the official position of the Orthodox and conservative that those children of mixed marriages are not really Jews and they're not theoretically kosher to marry? Is that still?
No, they, tradition, Orthodox Jewry says if the mother's Jewish, the kid is Jewish, no matter.
Okay, but what if the father was Jewish, but the mother wasn't? But they
The
were
mother wasn't, they will ask for conversion.
They have to be converted. That's what I thought.
The conservative movement is working on this. No, and it doesn't, is working on a kind of gender equality. I haven't kept up on this, so I don't know. I'd have to ask Rabbi Walken about it. By the way, wasn't that wonderful when the three rabbis met with the Pope? Rabbi Walken was one of them.
Rabbi Weiner Capital.
That's a good quote.
Three spoke to them.
Yeah.
That was, it's a
Weiner
What
and
was the
Leonard
purpose?
Matanki.
What was the purpose of the meeting?
There was a conference in Rome of the Chicago, now what's the Chicago Board of Rabbis? A trip to Rome, trip to Rome to to be in touch with the Rome, the synagogues of Rome, and they also went to Israel, the end of this. But they also had an opportunity to be at a large audience, I think in the square, with the Pope, to be there. The three of them, who were the heads of their separate branches, had a chance to meet separately, although it seemed to be outdoors, but with the Pope, and he said to them, "Pray for me." And they said, the three of them said, because I think they knew that was going to happen, they had prepared a very nice certificate which had the priestly benediction, Yivarechacha, which they said to him, and he took that.
Oh, that was
The Pope also had a meeting with Philomena. Did you see that? The picture
Oh,
of
yeah.
Philomena,
Yeah.
her last name is Lee, the actual Philomena. And he met with her, and which was significant because the movie raised a lot of questions about the abuses of the Catholic Church with these kids who were adopted, stolen, and then adopted. So after the Pope met with her, one of the spokesmen of the Pope then said, "The Pope doesn't see movies, so he didn't see this movie." And he, of course, therefore, never advises on or recommends movies. So his seeing her didn't mean he liked everything in the movie. How could he could? He didn't see it.
Right.
That's cute.
But the picture with the three rabbis with the Pope. And you know, in the past, when you would see some Jews with the Pope, your feelings about what that Pope was like, to me anyway, seeped in. Yeah, we're not sure he's a friend of the Jews. He's such a conservative, he's not making changes. American Catholics don't like him. You know, this guy.
Well,
Everybody
Who
likes.
rides a motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's just fine.
He also met with, the rabbis met with the papal delegate to the Jewish community, Cardinal, and had dialogue with him. Rabbi Stoller was in that group, and that was a fascinating dialogue as well. When they got to the subject of Israel, he said, "That's for our Secretary of State to discuss." We're only talking about
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of, it's not only interesting, but it's proper. You know, I mean, this is Israel, they see it as a country and the Jewish people as a people. And they see the Jewish people now, this book, as a people. It's incredible.
He's not only singing,
Yeah, very.
so do you know that, do you know, did I tell you, there's a legend going around in Rome that this Pope, many nights, gets out of the Pope clothes and gets old clothes and goes out and feeds the poor. That is their version of the Jewish story, if not higher, where the rabbi, before Yom Kippur, they don't know where he went. And every Yom Kippur, he's not there, he rushes in at the last minute. This is an Isaac Peretz story. And somebody follows him. And what he's doing is going to the old lady's house way down there to chop wood for her and start a fire for her. And that's why we can't get to show on time. And the guy who tails after him says that that's what he did. And the people said, you know, we always told one another that he went to heaven. That's why he couldn't be. And the guy who tailed him, Kalifak, says, yes, if not higher. And that's the story, if not higher. So that's, I mean, it's a folktale classic mode. That's the kings often do that. They changed their clothes and went out among the people to see it for everybody. So the Pope, and some people said, who says it's a legend? All right, so we talked our way out of tattooing.
Now, how do I get this online to hear you about
Oh, you are talking to the wrong person.
You just got to go to